All right, time to get excited. And with the college football season starting, that means it's time to welcome back a man who won't bet a parlay of less than 6 games. We welcome back Jon Berger. Jon, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Jeremy, good to see you, man. I missed you during this off season. I'm ready to get busy. I still don't know why it's called week 0, but maybe you'll explain that to us here in the show.
Well, hey, I just go with what they tell me, right? It says week
Doesn't
0.
make any
That's
sense
how we do it.
at all. We're playing games. What is week 0? But anyway, let's get going here.
I think it's because the full week comes next week. But let's start at the top. Let's start at the top with Heisman winner or Heisman favorite. All right. So you know the list. Who do you think has the better season this year?
Are we talking about Well, look, if we're talking about just the Heisman, everybody's going to look at Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I just don't think there's a lot of value there. So if we're talking about who's going to win it, I mean, those two guys are going to be 1-2. We know that. But I think there's some better value there. I think Will Anderson, the linebacker out of Alabama, I think that's one. If you're just looking for a value pick here in this situation, I think that might be one. And then I think Dylan Gabriel as well, the quarterback out of Oklahoma or transferred from UCF. I think if you're willing to put a little bit of money on both those guys, you're getting a good return. But obviously, if you're just talking about who's going to win it, I think you line up with Young and Stroud coming out of the gate, depending on how they end up their season in terms of their conference championships and the college football playoff. But I think those are the obvious choices. But if you want to put some money out there, go have some fun with it. You're getting some decent odds in the picks I just described to you.
But Jon, in your opinion, who do you think is going to have the better season, Young or Stroud?
Look, we're splitting atoms here, Jeremy. So it's very difficult to put a piece of paper between those two. And I hear people talk about this question online, and you hear it on the podcast and the bars and everything. Depends on what you're looking at. I mean, you're talking about the Heisman, you're talking about stats, you're talking about wins, conference titles, college football playoff, you're talking about the draft. I think in all those categories, the Heisman, the win total, titles, the draft, these guys are going to be 1 and 2, maybe 1, 2, and 3 the entire season. If you're going to make the argument, I think you can make the argument on the stat side. I think that Stroud's going to set up and probably have a better season statistically, probably early in the season. The reason I say that, Ohio State is going to have their best offensive line in years. They have a top 5 running back, top 5 wide receiver. Their offense is going to score a ton of points. But Jeremy, look at their schedule. They've got 6 or 7 games where Stroud is going to go off. He has an opportunity to put up monster numbers. Arkansas State, Toledo, Rutgers, Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland. I mean, there's 6 games where he can have monster numbers. Compare that over on the Alabama side and Bryce Young. There's really only 3 games. You look at their schedule and you think to yourself, wow, these are going to be monster numbers. So obviously they're going to be 1 and 2 in all the important categories. But if you're just looking at stats, I think Stroud will have a better season, certainly early, because there are questions on the offensive line for Alabama as well as wide receiver. Nick Saban will get that figured out, but I think the offenses are going to look different early. I think OSU is going to have a better offense, but Bama will figure it out by midseason.
And as you mentioned, it's probably a bit of the reason why he's at plus 200, the favorite to win the Heisman. Stroud, given that schedule, is going to have more chances to certainly go off. All right, Jon, let's talk about a little bit of future betting here. Give us a team total that you would bet the over on for this season.
I'm going to look at Northwestern. I'm going to go off the radar in this situation with Northwestern. Now, understand last year was a total disaster, a 3-9 team. They were very young, didn't have a lot of guys back. Offensive line wasn't great. But I think in this situation, I'm going to bet Northwestern to take the over for the following reasons. Number one, I think they're going to have the best offensive line that Pat Fitzgerald has had in 5 years. They got a 1,000-yard back in Evan Hall. Their quarterback play is going to be much better. And again, Jeremy, I look at their schedule. They have Duke. I think you can probably check the box on that one. Southern Illinois, check it. Miami, Ohio, check it. That puts you in a situation where you just got to get one of two, either Minnesota or Illinois. I like the odds on this bet. I think it's a safe bet. I'm taking the over on the win total for Northwestern.
Yeah, you mentioned 3-9 last season in the Big Ten. They open, of course, versus Nebraska. You see at the top there, that game at Aviva Stadium in beautiful Dublin, Ireland. Jon, have you ever been to Ireland?
Never been to Ireland. I want to go.
Got to check it out, John. You got to check it out. It's a good spot, especially Dublin. Go to the Guinness factory, maybe a little Jameson there, and you won't remember much of the rest of the day. I'll tell you that. All right, give us a win. Give us a win total to bet the under on.
Man, the wheels have come off. Indiana. Think about a few years ago, Indiana was right there, man. I mean, with Big Ten teams would roll up into Bloomington. They knew they were going to get a fight. The wheels have come off with Indiana. I'm going to take the under. Keep in mind, this team didn't win a conference game last year. And again, I look at their schedule, and their schedule is brutal, Jeremy. I'm going to take the under. I think you can check the box on Idaho, and then they would have to go get one of two, Maryland or Rutgers. But even if you look at their schedule and you look at Western Kentucky, can anybody sit here and say with confidence that IU is going to roll up and beat Western Kentucky? And I say that because if you find yourself in a track meet with Western Kentucky, you're in a jam. Western Kentucky can win that game. So I just like the bet. I like the value in this bet and taking the under on the Indiana win total.
Yeah, Western Kentucky, of course, Conference USA finalists from last year. They are favorites as they kick off the season against Illinois next Friday, sitting at 3.5 is what that line's currently at. All right, John, who's your best bet? Not who's going to win. Who's your best bet to win a conference title?
I look at the value here in North Carolina. I don't like the value for Bama. Vegas is all over that. I don't like the value at Ohio State. Vegas is all out of that. I think if you look at the ACC, I don't think that Clemson, a lot of people understand that they did a reset offensively, reset his entire team. And you go through that every several years as a great Power 5 school. But I'm still not convinced that those problems are fixed. So then I check down. I don't like the value for Bama, Ohio State. I'm going to look at North Carolina. I like the value on the bet here because assuming that Clemson doesn't come back at 100% in terms of what we're used to seeing them do offensively, you could see a scenario at North Carolina. Last year, tackle was kind of optional. They weren't great up front at the point of attack, either offensive or defensive line. They brought Chizik in as the defensive coordinator. Understand last year they lost the game in overtime to Pitt. Understand they blew a 9-point lead to NC State with about 30 left. So despite them not being great up front at the point of attack, couldn't tackle, they could have won both those games. So I like the value in this play. If Clemson doesn't come back and dominate that conference, you could see a scenario based on North Carolina and the job they've done in the offseason and making those improvements, kind of stepping up in that number one position. That's the bet I'm making today.
North Carolina taking on Florida A&M this coming weekend, week 0. They have the same odds as FSU, 16-1. Clemson, as you mentioned, the favorite at -140. Lastly, John, give us Jon Berger's pick to win the college football playoff.
Look, I think I'm going to make two small bets and a little bigger bet here because I want to hedge it. I think Bama, I think a bet on Bama and a bet Ohio State, about the same amount of money because the value's there. But I like the USC angle. I like the value here because when you look at what's going to happen at USC or what I think is going to happen, Lincoln Riley goes over there, takes Caleb Williams with him. I think there's going to be some shine back on USC. One thing I do know from watching Lincoln Riley in the Big 12, I live in Big 12 country, watched OU go through that series with Ohio State when Lincoln Riley was early in his tenure the offensive coordinator. This guy knows how to coach quarterbacks. This guy knows how to devise plays. He knows how to call plays, and this will be a dynamic offense that scores a lot of points. So do I think they can get through the schedule? Do I think they match up all that great with the Bama or Ohio State in terms of physicality? No, I don't. But I like the value of the bet. And if Lincoln Riley gets hot, that offense gets hot, you can see a scenario where that could play out.
All right, John, it is week 0. You've got the whole board in front of you this week. I mean, it's 11 games, but the whole board is in front of you. Give us your best bet for week 0.
You know, I'm going to go I look at Nebraska and I look at the Northwestern game, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Northwestern and the points in this situation. And a lot of people are not going down that route. And I'll tell you why. Both were 3-9 teams last year. They're playing it over at Ireland. That's, a 7.5-hour plane ride, awesome physically, right? 6 hour time change, awesome physically on the kids. So you get over there, you're there for 2 or 3 days. You got 2, 3, and 9 teams. Nebraska shows up, will be a little bit better offensively, but they've got 4 new assistants. They've got new schemes on both sides of the ball. I just don't have as much confidence in Nebraska as I do Northwestern. Again, Northwestern was 3-9 last year. I get it, but they're going to have better quarterback play. They got a 1,000-yard back. They play good on special teams. I just think that's too many points, especially with the 7.5-hour plane ride, 6-hour time change. Most of these kids have never been out of the U.S. That impacts you. I just like Northwestern in the points. I just think it's too many points. That's my best bet right now.
Regardless, going to be a great atmosphere at Aviva Stadium in Dublin, Ireland. He is wagering expert Jon Berger back with us, giving us those college football picks as the season gets rolling. Thanks, John. Good to see you as always. In terms of John's future picks recaps here, to pick the win to Heisman, CJ Stroud plus 200. Northwestern to go over their win total, to go under Indiana. Best bet to win the conference. There's value. It's not his pick, but just value on UNC to win the ACC at 16-1. And then his pick to win the college football playoff, Bama plus 180, Ohio State, and then you can hedge on USC. All right, so college football is back on CBS Sports Network. We kick off our coverage at noon Eastern time on Saturday. Austin Peay at Western Kentucky, the Conference USA Championship finalist from last year. Also with Conference USA, Charlotte at FAU at 7 Eastern time. Our Chris Hassel going to be on the call for that game. And then we cap our coverage with a big one in Hawaii as Vanderbilt come calling. Timmy Chang taking over as the new head coach at Hawaii. Going to be a special night there for the former Rainbow Warriors quarterback. All that action on CBS Sports Network.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.